What kind of mother trades her baby for a mansion? What kind of love forgets the hands that held it when the world was cold? She had everything, money, fame, the world at her feet, but she gave away the one soul who would have loved her forever. It was a warm, sticky evening in a small part of Brooklyn, New York. The electricity had been out for hours. A candle near the window flickered, throwing shaky shadows on the cracked walls of their one-room apartment. Daniel Brooks sat on an old cushion, gently rocking their 3-month-old baby girl, Amara, in his arms. She was whimpering softly, but his calm touch helped soothe her. He had learned how to stay strong in tough times. Vanessa Cole stood near the door, looking tense. Her phone was pressed to her ear, and her lips shook, not out of fear, but from something deeper. Daniel glanced at her from the corner of his eye. Then suddenly, her face lit up. It was a kind of glow Daniel hadn't seen since their wedding day. "Yes, sir." "Yes, attorney," she said quickly. "Tomorrow morning, I'll be there." She hung up and turned around. Her eyes were wide, sparkling with something Daniel couldn't quite understand. "What's going on?" he asked as he stood up. Vanessa dropped her phone on the plastic table and took a deep breath. "That was Attorney Donald," she said, her voice shaking. "Mr. Johnson, the billionaire. His lawyer just called me. He thinks I'm his daughter. His real daughter. He wants me to do a DNA test tomorrow at St. Luke's Hospital in Manhattan." Daniel blinked in shock. "Wait. Mr. Johnson? Johnson Industries?" "Yes, him," she nodded. "They said they've been looking for me for months, that I might be his blood." Silence filled the room. Then Daniel, still holding Amara, asked quietly, "Vanessa, have you called your mom? Asked her if this could be true?" Vanessa shook her head hard. "I don't need to. I've always known Emma wasn't my real dad. We look nothing alike. He's too small, too poor. I was meant for something bigger." Daniel stared at her. Her words hurt deeply. This was the same woman who once sold her gold earrings to buy him cough syrup when he was sick in college. But now, she sounded like a stranger. "Vanessa, even if it's true," he began, "it doesn't change the fact that he raised you." "I'm going tomorrow," she cut in sharply. "And if this is real, Daniel, then everything is going to change. Everything." That night, Daniel didn't sleep much. He sat with Amara in his arms, gently rocking her, while Vanessa packed a small bag and hummed a tune he'd never heard before. It was confident, and it made him uneasy. The next morning, Vanessa put on her finest green and gold dress with a matching scarf. She applied her makeup carefully, sprayed the last bit of her perfume, and gave Amara a quick kiss on the forehead. "You'll watch her, right?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "Of course. But I can't go to work. My manager said he'll fire me if I miss another day." "I'll be back before evening," she said, stepping out into the bright New York morning. But Daniel knew deep down, nothing would be the same again. At St. Luke's Hospital, Vanessa waited in the VIP lounge for nearly an hour. The room was quiet and fancy. Then Attorney Donald arrived, tall, bald, and dressed in a fine suit, along with 3 nurses and 2 security guards. "Miss Vanessa, thank you for coming," he said kindly. "Mr. Johnson is inside. He's very sick, but he wants to meet you before the test." Vanessa followed them down a long hallway that smelled like bleach and expensive things. When they opened the room, she gasped. There he was, Mr. Johnson, laying weak on the hospital bed, tubes in his nose, but his eyes still sharp and full of life. He lifted a frail hand and gave a small smile. "You look just like your mother," he whispered. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. She dropped to her knees beside his bed. The bed, not sure what to feel. The DNA test was done quickly. An hour later, the result came back, positive. Mr. Johnson closed his eyes and smiled weakly. "My daughter, you're really mine. I finally found you." He looked at his lawyer and said, "Change the will right away." By the end of the day, Vanessa Cole had $1 million in her bank account and 3 mansions in Queens. One of them even had a private elevator. Everything she had once dreamed of was now real. And she didn't even have to work for it. But she wasn't finished. Before going home, Vanessa made a stop at a small apartment in Harlem. Her mother, Sandra, was sitting on a stool beside Emma, the only man Vanessa had ever called Dad. A pot of soup was cooking on the stove. When Vanessa told them the news, Sandra froze. Emma stood up slowly, shaking. Sandra burst into tears. "I didn't think he'd ever find us," she whispered. "It was a mistake, just a one-night thing at a party. I loved Emma. I didn't want to lose him." Emma looked at Vanessa. The pain in his eyes ran deep. "So, I'm not your father." "No, I'm not your daughter," Vanessa said coldly. "I always knew. You never gave me anything. You failed me. My real father is a billionaire. Now I understand why I never fit into this poor life." Emma turned away and slowly walked back to his seat, tears falling down his face. He sat down and broke into sobs, like a man who had just lost everything. That evening, when Vanessa returned to their tiny place in Brooklyn, Daniel Brooks greeted her at the door, holding baby Amara. But Vanessa didn't smile. Instead, she looked around the room and said flatly, "This isn't my life anymore." "What do you mean?" Daniel asked, confused. "I bought this whole building," she replied. "I'm tearing it down soon. A shopping mall is coming here." Daniel gave a nervous laugh. "Vanessa, are you okay?" "I'm more than okay," she snapped. "I'm the daughter of Mr. Johnson, a woman of class. I can't keep living with a man who earns $75,000 a year and smells like sweat and baby powder." Daniel's smile faded. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," she hissed, walking to the closet and pulling out his bag, "get out." "What?" "I said get out," she repeated. She shoved the bag toward him, grabbed Amara's baby bag, and threw it too. "And take her with you. I don't want anything that ties me to this old life." Daniel just stood there. The woman he loved, the mother of his child, had just kicked him out, along with their baby, just because she found out her real father was rich. He looked at Amara, then looked at Vanessa. "You'll regret this," he whispered. "I won't," she said proudly. "I've arrived." Daniel stepped outside onto the dusty street, tears running down his face, Amara crying softly in his arms. Vanessa stood at the doorway, watching them disappear into the night. Then she slammed the door shut behind her. Exactly 1 week later, Vanessa stood at Mr. Johnson's funeral, dressed in a pure white lace dress, with a gold necklace around her neck, glittering on her chest. But just as she turned to walk past the grave, Mr. Johnson's oldest son, Maxwell, grabbed her arm. "Let me tell you something, Vanessa," he said in a low, angry voice. "We might not be able to take you out of the will, but as far as we're concerned, you're not part of this family. Enjoy the money, but don't ever come near us again." Vanessa froze. Cameras were flashing. Guests were watching. She tried to smile, but her lips trembled. For the first time, she felt completely alone. Later that night, Vanessa sat on the edge of a white leather couch in her Long Island mansion. The air smelled like perfume and fresh paint, but everything felt quiet. Too quiet. Her high heels clicked on the shiny marble floor as she walked to the huge window, looking down at the sparkling New York City skyline. It looked beautiful from up there, so different from the rough Bronx neighborhood she came from. Still, even with millions in the bank and 3 houses in her name, Vanessa couldn't stop thinking about what Maxwell told her. "You are not one of us." That sentence kept playing in her mind like a curse. She had walked into the Johnson family mansion wearing the most expensive dress she could find. Cameras snapped. Reporters whispered. Everyone stared. But instead of feeling like their daughter, she felt like an outsider, like someone crashing a party they weren't invited to. Mr. Johnson's children, 5 of them, all wearing matching formal outfits, barely looked at her. Even the family lawyer, who had supported her at the hospital, seemed uncomfortable. And when the will was read, giving her $1 million and the 3 properties, the mood in the room changed completely. Maxwell wasn't the only one giving her dirty looks. His younger sister, Vivian, who was also a lawyer, whispered the word gold digger under her breath. Vanessa kept smiling, but under her dress, her hands were shaking. Back home, she tried to forget. She drank champagne every night, got daily massages, hired fancy chefs, and went live on Instagram wearing filters and designer shades, telling her followers to never settle for less. But in the quiet moments, she couldn't stop herself. She would check Daniel's WhatsApp status using a fake account, just to catch a glimpse of baby Amara. Far away on the edge of Yonkers, Daniel sat on a small stool outside his mom's place, gently bouncing Amara on his knee. His eyes looked tired from nights without sleep, and his shirt had milk stains on the shoulder. "Mama, how did we get here?" he asked softly. His mother, a strong woman who had seen life struggles, wiped her hands on her apron. "It happened because you loved the wrong woman," she said. "She changed," Daniel replied. "No," his mother said, shaking her head. "She didn't change. The money just showed you who she really was." Daniel looked down at Amara, her little hand holding his thumb tightly. "I'll raise her alone," he said, "even if it kills me." And he meant it. Even though his boss had warned him, Daniel went back to work the very next day, with baby Amara strapped to his back in a carrier. Some of his co-workers laughed. Others gave him pitying looks. But his manager wasn't happy. "Daniel, this is a bank, not a daycare," he said sharply. "I understand, sir," Daniel replied. "But I had no choice." The manager sighed and walked away. But 2 days later, something unexpected happened. Daniel was called into the HR office. He thought he was about to be fired. Instead, he got promoted. Why? Because an elderly customer had posted a video on TikTok showing Daniel calmly helping customers at the counter, with a baby on his back. Transactions with a baby on his back, saying, "This is the most hard-working young man I've ever seen." The video went viral. Wanting to look good in the public eye, the bank gave Daniel Brooks a raise and promoted him to Customer Experience Manager. From that day, Daniel's life slowly started getting better. Meanwhile, Vanessa Cole's world was falling apart. She ignored every financial advisor and refused to take advice from experts. She had one goal: to become the most powerful female property owner in New York City. "I'm going to build the biggest mall in Queens," she told Attorney Donald. "And I want it finished fast." Against everyone's warnings, she hired a man she met at a yacht party. His name was Jonathan, tall, smooth, British accent. He claimed to be a top contractor. Vanessa trusted him completely and handed him full control of the project. Within 1 week, she had wired the full $1 million to him. "Speed is my thing," Jonathan had said, sipping red wine. "Trust me, sweetheart. I'll make you richer than your dad ever dreamed." Vanessa believed every word. She even bragged online. "Watch out, New York. The real boss lady has arrived." But soon, things started looking strange. One Monday morning, she drove to the mall site. It was completely empty. No workers. No equipment. Just grass and dirt. "Maybe it's a weekend delay," she told herself. Later, she went to check on one of the mansions Jonathan was helping her sell. Gone. She checked another one. Also gone. A third one. Strangers were already living there. Her chest tightened. She quickly dialed Jonathan's number. Number not reachable. She tried again. And again. Still nothing. She rushed to the address he gave her when they signed the contract, his so-called office in Manhattan. "Vacant. He doesn't work here," the building security guard said. Vanessa's knees gave out. She collapsed right there on the sidewalk in her expensive designer dress, screaming, "No. No. This can't be happening." She was rushed to the hospital. The doctor said she had a panic attack, high blood pressure, and dehydration. When she woke up, the truth hit her hard. Everything was gone. The money. The homes. The dream. She checked her account. $18.42. That was all she had left. The next morning, Vanessa wore a plain scarf and long skirt. She sat on a wooden bench at a busy street corner. She placed a small tray of tomatoes and peppers in front of her and quietly told prices to people walking by. "This is not my life," she whispered to herself. People walked past and stared. "Isn't that Vanessa? The girl with all the mansions. I thought she went to Dubai last month. So the money's finished, huh?" She ignored the whispers. All she could do now was survive. She tried calling Daniel. She begged. She called. She texted, "Please forgive me. Take me back, for Amara's sake." Daniel read the messages. But he didn't respond. His life was different now, peaceful, stable, filled with love from his daughter. But Vanessa didn't give up. She went to his office. She stood at the gate. She cried in public. Finally she saw him, with Amara, now a bright-eyed 6-year-old in a pretty pink dress. Vanessa's heart broke. Daniel, please. Daniel looked at her and said quietly, I've moved on. Then he walked away. Amara didn't even recognize her. One hot afternoon, Vanessa was arranging tomatoes on her wooden table when a black SUV pulled up. The window rolled down. A young woman stepped out, wearing a clean pilot uniform, dark sunglasses, and glowing brown skin. Vanessa's mouth dropped open. It was Amara. All grown up. Before Vanessa could say a word, she dropped to her knees. Amara, my daughter, please forgive me. Shoppers stopped. People pulled out their phones. Someone started recording. Amara looked at her, quiet and still. Then she said, get up. Vanessa's hands shook. I'm so sorry. Amara reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. There's $5,000 inside. Open a real store. Live better. But remember this. Vanessa looked up. Amara's voice cracked. You may have given birth to me, but you'll never be my mother. Then she turned and walked back to the SUV. Vanessa sat frozen, watching the car disappear into traffic. Her knees gave out. She fell to the ground and cried, not because of the money, but because of the one name she knew she'd never hear again. Mommy. The market went quiet. People whispered as soon as the car was gone. That's her daughter? She threw away her husband and child. Now look at her. She didn't even call her mommy. Shameful. Vanessa stayed on her knees. Tears soaked the powder on her face. The envelope trembled in her hand. But it felt like nothing. Money couldn't fix what she had lost. All her life, she believed success would bring her respect. That money could buy love. But kneeling there in the dirt, being mocked by strangers, she finally understood. Respect isn't bought with wealth. It's earned through love. Vanessa didn't go home that night. She walked the streets of New York City until the sky turned dark and the streetlights blinked on like judging eyes. She ended up at a small Catholic church, one she used to pass every day on her way to campus during her college days in Albany. It was quiet. Empty. She walked in, placed the envelope with the $5,000 on the altar, and dropped to her knees again. God, please let me start over, she whispered. The next day, she used part of the money to open a real vegetable stall in a small corner shop near the main road. She filled it with fresh tomatoes, peppers, onions, and dried fish. She even hired a young girl from Georgia to help her. Every morning, they would sweep the shop, say a small prayer, and open for business. No more wigs. No more fancy lace dresses. Vanessa now wore simple clothes and rubber slippers. She stopped looking in mirrors. Stopped checking Instagram. Stopped caring about how she looked. But deep in her heart, she held onto one small hope. That maybe, just maybe, Amara would return one day, and call her mommy, even once. Meanwhile, Amara's life was rising like the morning sun. She had just been promoted to senior pilot at one of the biggest airlines in North America. People praised her. Newspapers wrote about her. Her story went viral. Abandoned baby becomes pilot. When a reporter asked, "Did your mother inspire you?" Amara smiled softly and replied, "No. My father did." Daniel watched the interview on YouTube. A tear rolled down his cheek. He was now the branch manager of the same bank that once nearly fired him. Fire him. But now his face was on motivational posters. He was invited to youth programs to inspire young people with his story. Yet, even with all his success, Daniel never got married again. "I'm married to my purpose," he would say when people asked. And that purpose was Amara. Back in Long Island, the Johnson mansion was cold and quiet. Mr. Johnson had been buried for 6 years. His children were now fighting over money and business shares. Vivian, the sharp-tongued lawyer, was leading a court case against Maxwell, who had secretly tried to sell one of the oil fields without telling the board. The family's empire was falling apart. And for the first time in years, someone from that world reached out to Vanessa Cole. An old housekeeper from the Johnson home called her one evening. "Auntie Vanessa," she whispered over the phone. "They're planning to remove your name from the family company." Vanessa didn't respond. She didn't care anymore. What was the point? She had been part of that world. She had lost herself in it. The gold, the lies, the money, none of it mattered now. But fate wasn't finished with her yet. One afternoon, as she was locking up her shop, she heard a small voice behind her. "Excuse me, ma'am, please, do you have water?" She turned around. A barefoot little boy, around 7 years old, stood there, sweaty, tired, and hungry under the hot New York sun. Vanessa rushed inside, grabbed a cold bottle of water, and handed it to him. He drank it like it was the best thing he'd ever had. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "I'm Jaden," he replied. "My mom is sick. We haven't eaten since yesterday." Vanessa's throat tightened. He reminded her of Daniel, of Amara, of the baby she had once thrown away for money. She gave the boy a plate of rice, some fruit, and a note. "Tell your mom to come here tomorrow. I'll help her." As the boy left, Vanessa stood at the doorway and whispered to herself, "I may not be a mother to Amara, but maybe, just maybe, I can be a mother to someone else." But as Vanessa was trying to rebuild her broken spirit, something else was happening behind the scenes. Jonathan, the man who vanished with her money, was back in the city. Only now, he didn't go by Jonathan anymore. He was calling himself Chief G-Day, a rising real estate developer known for throwing flashy parties and sponsoring celebrity events. One evening, while Vanessa was watching the small TV in her shop, she saw something that made her heart stop. A news report said, "New York real estate mogul Chief G-Day to open the biggest shopping mall in Queens next month." Vanessa froze. The mall they showed on the screen, it was her design. The sketches, the shape, even the colors, everything she had once dreamed of. Everything he stole. Now it was being built, under his name. Her hands shook. She dropped the remote. And just like that, all the shame, pain, and silence turned into fire. She stood up, grabbed her small Nokia phone, and dialed the one number she thought she'd never call again. "Hello. Attorney Donald. I need your help." The next morning, Vanessa Cole stood outside the gate of Johnson & Partners law firm in downtown Manhattan, holding an old folder filled with documents, her original mall design, property transfer receipts, and the fake contract Jonathan signed before vanishing. She was about to walk in when a black Range Rover pulled up beside her. The door opened, and out stepped Vivian Johnson. She stared coldly at Vanessa, just like she had at the funeral 6 years ago. "What are you doing here?" Vivian asked. "I'm taking back what belongs to me," Vanessa said, standing tall for the first time in years. Vivian smirked. "Let's see if you're ready for a fight." Vanessa didn't back down. The New York heat pressed against her skin, but the fire in her chest burned hotter. She clutched the worn envelope tightly, proof that the mall chief G-Day was now claiming as his own had been her creation. Her blood. Her pain. Her fall. Vivian folded her arms, her heels clicking on the pavement. "You think showing up with old paper will change anything?" Vanessa met her eyes. "These aren't just old papers. They're signed contracts. Blueprints. Bank receipts. Dates. Everything I need to bring him down." Vivian raised a brow. "You should have stayed at your vegetable stall. Our world isn't for people like you anymore." Vanessa's voice was calm. "Then I'll bring your world into mine." And with that, she walked through the glass doors of Johnson & Partners without another word. Inside, Attorney Donald looked up, surprised. He hadn't seen Vanessa since the funeral. She looked older, humbler, but her eyes were sharp. "I need your help," she said. "That man, Jonathan or whatever he goes by now, he stole everything from me. And now he's launching the mall I designed." Donald gestured for her to sit. She laid the documents on his desk. He read through them, his expression growing serious. "This is big," he said finally. "If what you're saying is true, he could be facing criminal charges for fraud." "He won't get away with it," Vanessa said. "I lost everything, my husband, my daughter, my dignity. But I won't let him take my soul too." Donald leaned back. "Then we need to move fast. File a court injunction. Alert the press. Make this loud." "I'm ready," Vanessa replied. As she stood to leave, she paused. "One more thing, Donald. I don't want them all for me." He looked up. "Then who's it for?" She took a deep breath. "Amara's name should be on it." That night, in the quiet corner of her shop, Vanessa opened a brown notebook and began writing a letter. A letter to Amara. It wasn't full of excuses, just the truth. I once traded you and your father for money and pride. And when it all fell apart, I was left with nothing but shame. But I never stopped loving you. This mall was my dream. Now it's yours. Whether you ever call me mommy again or not. She signed it. Sealed it. Kissed the envelope. Vanessa wasn't chasing money or family anymore. She was chasing redemption. And this time, she was ready to fight for it. The courtroom was packed. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered updates into their phones. The air was thick with tension. At the front, Vanessa sat in a plain gray skirt and blouse. No makeup. No jewelry. Just her truth. Across from her was Chief Jide, formerly known as Jonathan, in a sharp black suit, smirking and whispering to his lawyer. But his confidence started to crack when Attorney Donald stood up, holding Vanessa's signed design sketches and the original documents with Jonathan's signature on them. The judge's voice rang out. Based on the evidence, it is clear the defendant lied about his identity, forged contracts, and illegally took property that belonged to the plaintiff. Vanessa gripped her chair tightly. This court hereby freezes all assets tied to the project known as Emerald City Mall. Full ownership is awarded to Miss Vanessa Cole. And a criminal investigation into the defendant will begin immediately. Bang. The gavel hit. The room gasped. Jonathan's face turned pale. Vanessa blinked quickly, her eyes full of tears, but she didn't cry. Not this time. Justice had been served. 2 weeks later, Vanessa stood in front of the same mall that once symbolized her greatest loss. Now, a new sign stood at the gate. Amara's Place, a center for girls who dare to dream. It wasn't just a mall anymore. It was a mission. The grand opening was simple. No celebrities. No red carpets. Just young girls from all over New York, from shelters, foster homes, and the streets, walking into the building to find training centers, workshops, a library, and hope. Amara arrived late. She stepped out of a black car, dressed in full pilot uniform. Her eyes scanned the building. She didn't think she'd feel anything. Until she saw the plaque. Dedicated to Amara Brooks, from a woman who finally learned what it means to love selflessly. Amara stopped. Her chest rose and fell. Vanessa walked up slowly, eyes low. I know I don't deserve another chance, she whispered. But I built this for you. You're the only part of me I'm proud of. Amara looked at her. Why now? Because I finally realized, Vanessa said softly, you were always the treasure, not the money. Amara didn't say a word. But after a long silence, she opened her arms. And for the first time in 7 years, Vanessa felt the warmth of her daughter's hug. Not everyone clapped. Not everyone forgave. But in that one moment, the woman who once lost everything finally found something worth living for.